Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Champions Real Estate Team at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. We are doing our renting versus buying. What is it truly costing you? Kind of just a short video that we were talking about a couple weeks ago on our Talking Real Estate segment, which we do every Wednesday at 12 o'clock here on Facebook Live, basically on our Champions Real Estate Team Facebook page. So we just kind of get out as much information. And actually, Russ Williams, who's joining us, with Arbor Bank, and Rich Howdle with the Champions Real Estate Team. We were kind of just talking about renting versus buying. What, in our environment that we're in right now, what makes sense? I think I have a lot of clients, friends, family, and such that as we're looking at it, what does it make sense for them to, what the numbers? Everyone's, us being in real estate, everyone's like, oh, you're just trying to get me to buy a house. Well, yeah, we'd love to work with you, love to give you that information. And ultimately, our goal is to do what's best for you. We have a fiduciary responsibility to do what is in your best interest, throughout the entire real estate process. But it's one of those things I'd love to see you guys build wealth through real estate. One of those things as you go through there that that's what our goal is to do. So just a second here, technical difficulties. All right, sorry about that. So Russ is joining us. So we got a little technical here. So yeah, we're talking about our renting versus buying. What is it truly costing you? So I'll pull up a kind of a little presentation, go through it here pretty quickly so you guys, everyone can see it. So there we go, present, standard, voila, right? So there we go. As we go through here. So yeah, like I said before, our goal is basically give you that information and what makes sense for you. With interest rates being, hovering around 3% and historic lows, lowest they've ever been, and people are like, well, it's a seller's market, so housing prices are going up, but that with those low interest rates, it's still making it very affordable to buy a house today. And, when we kind of took a look at it a couple of weeks ago, Russ Williams and myself and Rich, we just kind of sat down and Russ kind of crunched the numbers, did a nice spreadsheet for us. And we'll show you that here in a second, of exactly what, putting pen to paper, what does it make sense for you to rent? So, there's obviously many pros to renting a house. You have no maintenance. You don't have to, you call the landlord, you call the maintenance guy to come over and take a look at the leaky faucet or, mowing the grass and stuff like that. You have less money up front. So you necessarily don't have a down payment when you're renting. If you're working on your credit, you're trying to buy a house, but, you're taking those steps to do that. So there are some, great, pros to renting, if you don't know if you're going to be in an area for a certain amount of time, if you're only going to be there a year, so it doesn't make sense to rent, obviously, not necessarily to buy a home. And then on the flip side, buying a home, has great advantages, just as renting does, wealth building, building that appreciation and the asset, and then being able to leverage that asset to maybe buy other assets and other real estate through there. You have the tax benefits, and the stability, the predictability. You have a fixed rate interest, your mortgage payments for the most part going to stay the same, your taxes and your insurance, will increase over time. But then again, rent, typically increases anywhere, I think we have about 2.5 to 4% annually. If you have a nice landlord that's keeping it, steady for you, that's great. But nationally, they tend to go up. So that's something that we'll talk about too, is what is that truly costing you as you go through there in that situation of what makes sense for you. So we'll get into taking a look at the numbers here. So one of the quotes I love about Will Rogers here, it says, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. It's just kind of like the stock market. People try to time the market. Well, interest rates are going to go down, or, it's a seller's market. So, housing prices are up. Well, I take a look at my personal experiences. I graduated college in 2005, got my real estate license in 2008, being a fourth generation. I've had real estate basically ingrained in my head from basically the time I was born, sitting at the kitchen table, eating dinner and stuff like that. But, when I moved back to Omaha from Lincoln, and I wasn't, I was like, well, am I going to stay in Omaha? Am I going to move out? Well, my parents, being in real estate themselves, are like, well, if you're going to stay in Omaha, buy a house. Get into something, start building that asset, building that equity into your home. And so in 2008, it's like, oh, the housing market's, 2007 housing market's going up. I bought a Hearthstone home, split entry home, for $110,000. I bought a Hearthstone home for $110,000. In 2007, we closed. In 2008, 2009, when the housing market burst, the same exact split entry home that I could buy went down to 104. So basically, I could have saved $6,000 had I waited a year. But then fast forward, I just sold that house in 2019 for 187, 188 and some change. So I made $78,000 on that asset. And oh, should I waited a couple more years? Well, a couple more years, that house was 120. So it's just, housing market goes up, housing market goes down. So timing the market, it's just jump in and get in the market, at a safe time for you that makes sense with the down payment and your monthly payment, going through that aspect of it to make sure that the finances line up for you. So that's one of the quotes that I really like from a real estate standpoint, and, ultimately helping you grow your net wealth. So as we take a look at, when Russ and I were talking and Rich a couple of weeks ago, it's like, well, what is it? On average, at a $200,000 house, what's your average mortgage? What's the mortgage with the rates today? What's your average rent? It kind of just tweaked me because I was seeing, houses on Facebook for rent. My exact same house I used to live in, a 1,200 square foot house, was renting for like $1,600. My mortgage was like $1,000. So I'm like, someone's paying $600 more to live in the same house that I am, and I'm gaining that equity in my house. So that's just something Russ kind of took a look at it. So we'll kind of look at the next slide here. But so what we did for just this simple, seminar video chat here of what it's truly costing you is we kind of crunched the numbers just for an example aspect of it. That we took a look at a $200,000 mortgage payment, versus a $200,000 house. What was the average rent that we were kind of seeing around here? So with a 3% down interest rate or down payment, your initial investment on about a 3% 30-year interest was about $1,350. The average rent we kind of saw was basically right around that $1,600 a month. So your difference in that owning versus renting is $250. So then we kind of took a look at it, break it down, and what does that kind of equate to? Well, we looked at it that if you bought a house, jumping forward here, so I'm going to jump off of our slideshow and show the spreadsheet that Russ kind of put together for us. So if we take a look at this spreadsheet here, I kind of zoom in so maybe it'll kind of be a little bit clearer for everybody to see. So you're saving an average of $250 a month. It's $3,000 a year that you're saving. And say you take that extra money and you invest it into a Roth IRA, 401k, on an average annual percent return rate, just an estimate about 6%. You're made $83 on the first year. You bought a house for $200,000, and right now the average annual appreciation is about 4.5. Now, ultimately, as real estate agents, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future. I mean, look at when I bought my house in 2007. The next year you could buy that house for $6,000 less, the exact same house. Funny thing is side note, Douglas County assessor assessed my house up to $213, and I could buy my same house for $104. So that was one of those years that I protested for my Douglas County assessed value. So that's something at Champions that we also take care of for you as well. But so your property values are going up. So your net asset, is $212,000. So in 1 year, you could potentially save, $12,000 that you're, kind of going to be that's what it's costing you essentially to rent, that if you were to buy a similar type house. And then as we go through here, 5 years out, it's saving basically, if you had a $200,000 house, investing that extra, you subtract that, you're at $66,000 that you're basically costing yourself on that rental aspect of it through there. So that's something that when we take a look at it, is I think that a lot of friends that I have, clients, people I talk to that are renting houses, oh, we're going to buy a house, and it's, they just never get ready to, or they don't take those initial steps to sit down with a lender or sit down with myself or someone here on the Champions Real Estate team to really get your ducks in a row and put you on a path to home ownership. Because every year, as you can see, it's almost costing you 12 grand a year, potentially in assets, and that's one of those things that we're really looking at, is how can we help you to do that? And so, I feel like, people that are renting, sometimes they just get in that habit, habitual, oh, I'm going to buy a house, and all of a sudden it comes, a month before they got to renew their lease, like, oh gosh, I didn't take time to really get my ducks in a row or meet with the lender, and I'll do it next year. Well, every year you're kind of waiting, 5 years down the road, it's costing you $66,000 potentially, at least in this example. Now we get housing markets go up, housing markets go down, interest rates go up, go down, but that's something we really want to take a look at, is what is it truly costing you ultimately, in the long run, when you're buying and selling a house, on the renting versus buying. So jump back onto our little presentation here. So yeah, that's kind of our example that we have from the $200,000, example, kind of the average, sale price here in Omaha is just a little bit higher than that. And we'll kind of touch on with Russ here in a little bit, just kind of what does it take to get into a house, and kind of get those initial steps of getting you ready to rock and roll and to get into the housing market. So, so power of time and money. So I think, the biggest thing is compounding your interest out there. So when you kind of take a look at it, 200, that's saving that extra $250 a month, versus renting versus owning. When we talked about the pros and cons, as buying a home, you're going to have maintenance, you're going to have to mow the grass, you're going to have furnace, you're going to have air conditioners, you're going to have, those type of things that come up. But ultimately that $250, you can be putting in an emergency fund, and you build up that emergency fund to say $5,000 or whatever the cost of a furnace is going to be, or your deductible for, the next hailstorm that comes to Nebraska. Then you got to replace a roof. But once you have that, then you take that $250, either you put it into a Roth IRA or you save it and you're putting it towards another asset. So, and ultimately you have the potential increase in your property value, your appreciation. So the difference between what your house is worth and what you owe to the bank is essentially your equity. I call that, for simplicity's sake, because people don't always know what equity is, it's basically your house savings account. And then essentially from that step, once you build that appreciation, ultimately if you bought it with less than 20% down, you may now have 20% loan to value, and then you can take away that mortgage insurance premium if you have a conventional loan. So now you're saving maybe an extra $50 to $100, $150 a month. Add that to the $250. Now you're saving, $400 a month, and now you can leverage your asset, because now if you have that equity in there, my wife and I, when we sold our house last year, we essentially bought a lot. In 2016, we took our equity out of our house. Basically, we had, we bought it for 110. I think it appraised, when we did our home equity line of credit at like 175. So we had, essentially almost $80,000 that essentially we could borrow or use, and pay an interest rate to the bank, basically to borrow our own money. But then we're buying an asset with an asset. And so we bought our lot, so that we could build our next house on. Well, some people will take that leverage and they'll go buy another rental property. So now you're on the next little nugget here, little highlight is a passive income stream. So now if you take that home equity, and you use that to potentially buy a new asset, you can hopefully build that wealth. So it's amazing how you can see that just by getting out of that, the hamster in a wheel, spinning your wheels in there, in that rental cycle, to sit down with somebody like myself, Rich, or Janine just joined us, use another agent on our champions team, and sit down with Russ from a money standpoint to let's get a ball game here. And maybe that's a year out. Maybe that's 18 months out, because you got to work on your credit. You got to do some things like that. You got to get, settled in your career or your job. But how can we help you, gain that wealth out there? So I think that's one of those things that when you are looking at renting versus buying, especially in today's market with the low interest rates, if our interest rates were really high and housing, and the sales prices were going through the roof, maybe it might not make sense to buy a house right now. So that's stuff that we're happy to sit down and literally go over it. But I think this is something that, like I said before, Russ and Rich, myself, and our team, we were just sitting around talking about it. Like, man, there's some people out there that just need to hear it, and it's they want to buy a house, but they truly don't have the numbers of what it's really costing them, by kind of just sitting and paying someone else's mortgage. So these are just kind of the highlighted bullet points. Basically 5 years cost of renting. Basically, that's taking that extra $250, putting that away into a Roth, some kind of retirement account. And then as that appreciation of the house, basically at 5 years, it basically equates to about, $67,000. And over 30 years, you're almost over $750,000 that you're just leaving on the table now if you just were habitual, just staying and renting. Some people just don't want to have to deal with the headaches, and that's perfect. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with renting, and in there, it's a necessity in some aspects of it too. So, but just having that information to sit down and go, what makes sense, ultimately for you, and does it make sense? So those are the things that we kind of take a look at. So we'll kind of touch base with Russ, and I know we can kind of touch on, what does it take to essentially get into a house, what programs. So I think, when you're renting a house, you're trying to build up that nest egg to put down a big down payment. And I think there's some programs out there that can help individuals get into a house and just, stop paying someone else's mortgage and start gaining some of that equity into your own house. But Russ, you're on mute, so make sure you unmute yourself.
You bet. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to kind of dovetail on what you just said. We all need a place to live, and you're either going to be paying for rent or paying for the property that you own. And I don't look at it as paying for the property you own. You're investing in real estate. What's interesting to note is that depending upon the statistics you follow, between 80 and 90% of all of the millionaires got there through real estate, whether that be their primary home or otherwise. So I'm a believer in it. But there's a common misconception when it comes to real estate among folks that they think you have to have 20% down payment. The percentage of people that still believe that is incredibly high, and that's not necessarily the case. There are lots of subsidy programs out there that can get that minimum down payment to as low as $500, that minimum out of pocket. Others are $1,000, but generally speaking, there are two families of loans, government loans and FHA. Your government loans are going to be things like VA for veterans, which is zero down payment. Also, there's what they call guaranteed rural housing. So for those of you that like to have a little bit of open space and a sky above your head, zero down payment for rural areas. In town for FHA, or for that matter, anywhere you can use FHA with 3.5% down. One of the common loans we're seeing in the current market, though, is conventional financing. You may have heard the terms Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and as Mark had mentioned earlier, the minimum down payment on those loans is 3% before taking into account any down payment assistance or subsidy programs that are out there. So for those of you that are saying, I don't think I have 3% to put down. Well, if you moved into an apartment, did you have a security deposit? Did you have first month's rent? You may be a good portion of the way there between those two figures. So I'd encourage you to reach out to these guys because you may be closer to buying a home than what you think. Mark, what else would you like me to cover?
I think that's a lot of, I think some of the misconceptions, like you said, is that it takes a whole bunch of money to get into something. I know when I bought my first house, through college, I kind of invested in the stock market and stuff like that. And my dad, being in real estate, I was like, well, I don't want to put, more than, 5% down. And in my mind, I had that word down payment is that I'm losing that money. And I've been around real estate my entire life. And, in real estate, we have our own lingo and our own verbiage. And, you get lost in that aspect of it. And, you get in the finance world, they have their own lingo and all that stuff. But down payment, that was my hiccup. Well, I don't want to take money out of my stock account, and put it towards my house because I'm losing that money. Well, you're really not. You're taking it from one investment vehicle and putting it into another investment vehicle. So be it the stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all that kind of fun stuff. You can call your financial advisor, hey, sell this stock and get that money within a day, and then in the real estate market, when you take that money and put it into an investment, I call it your initial investment is another term for down payment, because then you're just taking it from one vehicle, shifting it into the other, and then you're hopefully going to eliminate some of that, maybe mortgage insurance, and stuff like that, you can keep that money in yourself. But if you need to get to that money, you can, like I said, a home equity line of credit, which is short for, or long for HELOC. So when you hear people say HELOC, that's what they're talking. You're taking a loan out on your house savings account, your equity, essentially. And so you're paying an interest on it. But, like my wife and I, we bought a lot with that equity. Some people may go pay for a big vacation. Well, you can't get that money back off that vacation. So you hope you had a great time, so it's just using that line of credit wisely, let's make sure money can do what you want with it. But that's something that all of a sudden they realize, well, I had all this equity. Well, you spent it. You can't spend it twice. You can't sell your house and then think you're going to get that equity back because you've already spent it. But those are some of those things I think in that line of it, that when you're talking about getting into a house, that you may have assets other places. And I'm not saying take it out of your 401k or anything like that, but if you have just a stock account or savings account, putting it into one real estate, into an investment vehicle, you're not losing that money, I guess is my kind of point. Because I thought in my mind, if I make a payment, if I make a car payment, it's going to the bank. If I make my electrical whole PPD payment, I'm not seeing that money again. So I think that's something, like you said, is there is ways to get into a house comfortably, from that standpoint.
Mark, it's interesting too. I'll have folks say, Russ, the homes are only appreciating at 4.5%. That's just not enough for me. But I want to reframe this for just a moment. The amount you're going to be paying a housing expense, whether you're renting or whether you're making a payment on a house that you own. So think of it this way. In the case of Mark's $200,000 property that you're putting 3% down, that's $6,000. Now, if that $200,000 house appreciates at 4.5%, it's picked up $9,000 in gain, and your investment for that year was only $6,000. That's more than 100% return on your money compared to an investment account that you might have with your 401k or other places that is having a great year at 10%. So I want to kind of reframe the way you look at it. You're getting a return on the investment that you put down for down payment, not the total price of the home. The total price of the home is going to appreciate at 4.5% on the entire balance, as opposed to just the $6,000 you put in.
Yeah. Well, this is the spreadsheet that you put together a little while ago. So this third row here is basically buying it at the $200,000 1 year. If it's appreciation 4.5, I mean, we're in Omaha right now. We're probably 3%, 3 to 4. And then ultimately the market's going to go up, the market's going to go down. Like I said, I bought my house 2007, 2009, you could buy it for $6,000 cheaper. So if I would have had to sell my house then, I would have lost money. So, I mean, there's, the market always doesn't always go up. But just kind of a look at it, that in 5 years, you could be selling your house for $249, $250. That's $50,000, and you're putting $6,000, like you said, down. That's a pretty good return on your investment. There's some clients that I've had that, are looking to sell their house. They just bought it 2-3 years ago, and they're walking away, ahead of the game, in that aspect of it, and so it's one of those things that even if you're going to be here for, 5 to 10 years, it's still, my end goal when I bought my house, I just use that as an example because it's personal. I was only going to be there 5 to 10 years. I ended up being there 12. So it's one of those things I tell my clients, oh, we're only going to be there 5 years. We're going to move. Well, unless from a job standpoint that you're going to relocate and it's kind of in the works already. But if you're just like kind of myself, single guy out of college and, all right, if I stay here, great. I'm all that kind of fun stuff. Well, I was there for 12 years, and I walked away, by the time I had my down payment, everything, I walked away with, a decent chunk of equity in there. And you can do whatever you want with that equity. You could go buy an additional rental property. You could go buy a lot for your next house, and all that kind of assets to leverage your income. So, I think that's kind of one of those things that we kind of look at through that process of it. So I'll jump back here to the, do you have anything else to add on that, Russ?
I think you covered the high points. Yes.
I don't want to take too much time. I mean, we're just kind of rolling through here as we go through, but, so yeah, as we go through, so it's just kind of that's the thing I just wanted to get out to the public and just to our sphere that we work here at Champions and stuff like that. And, all the agents we have on our team, just so they have a resource to look at it when we talk to people about renting. I just think that you're comfortable. You're comfortable just making the rent payment and you're like, oh, I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to buy a house. And then, oh, I'm going to renew my lease. Okay, I'm going to buy a house next year. And I think that's the biggest kind of the hamster and a wheel thing that you kind of get into it, in that aspect of it. So, as we go through, so kind of the timeline of buying. So what does it take to buy a house and go through there? And it's one of those that, I'm happy to sit down with you and kind of go over exactly what you need to do. So kind of first step is talking with one of the realtors here at Champions Real Estate Team, myself, Mark Wehner, Rich Howell, Janine Cannon, Thor Larson, Annie Hatfords, who's a new agent, joined us. And then Jeff Peterson as well. So we're all happy to sit down and jump on and educate you through that. So, and the next is just develop a plan, so it's all right, let's sit down, let's develop a plan, to get you into a house, because I think the way interest rates are, and Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're probably going to be sitting around that 3%, 3.5% probably for the next 6 to 12 months, barring any kind of geopolitical, big type of thing that happens. And for every 1% that the interest rates go up or go down, that affects your purchasing power by about 10%. So if you're at $100,000, interest rates go up, from 3 to 4. Now your purchasing power is only at $90,000 versus that $100,000. So it's a big aspect of it. So developing a plan to get you to where you need to go. Do you need to build up credit? We can put you in contact and help you do that. Determining your buying power, kind of what I just said, touching base with Russ and seeing, all right, how much do you need to save? What do you need to have for a down payment, your initial investment? And it is that is, like I said, it's just moving it from one investment vehicle via the savings account, investment account, into your house savings account, which is your equity. And then it's kind of setting, and then the fun part, setting up a home search. Where do you want to be? And all that kind of aspect of it, and then buying your new home, all that kind of good stuff. So as always, we're here to answer any of your questions. I think some people are like, well, I don't want to waste your time. We're still a couple of years out from buying a house. Well, let us know. Let us know exactly, how we can help you. And it's getting it sit down. You're not wasting our time. My goal is to help you educate, because I want you to be able to go out there and compete in the competition, because right now you have to. You can't just participate. If you're out there going, oh, I haven't talked to a lender yet, but let's go look at houses. Oh, I really like this house. Let's go write an offer. Well, if you haven't talked to a lender and you kind of think, you did one of the mortgage, calculators online, that's typically only your principal and interest payment on those mortgage calculators. It's not taking into effect taxes, nor is it taking into effect homeowners insurance. So I think that's something that I've talked to, first-time home buyers like, oh, here's what I'm approved for. And they've kind of done their own math with that mortgage calculator online. And then, with Russ, any of us on the team, we can sit down and give you a cost sheet for that. So yeah, maybe that's a good idea. I have an example of a cost sheet kind of at $200,000. So let me pull that up here. So this is just an example of a conventional 5% down, 1234 Main Street, a $200,000 house. I did it at 3% interest rate, so you can do, like Russ said, a 3% down, $6,000 down. So there's different ways that we can do going through here. These are the lender kind of fees here. Russ has those exact numbers. Mine's just an estimate. I try to estimate high. Then you have your homeowner's insurance, taxes, sorry, title charges, going through here. So basically kind of get down to the meat of it. So principal and interest. So this is what you see, that 801 is what you're seeing on those mortgage calculators online. But then you have to add in your homeowner's insurance, which could go up or go down, depending on if you bundle it with your car insurance, all that kind of fun stuff. And then you got real estate taxes. So for this property is about $4,100. So you divide that by 12. And then you got your mortgage insurance. So this is that number that until you get 20% loan to value, that stays on there. So that's an extra $100 that you're paying, to get that lower percent down. So basically what you need to bring to the table is about $16,000 on a 5% loan. But you take a look at it, is that $10,000 of that 16 is basically your initial investment. So that's not all just going away. That's putting it in your house savings account. So that's sometimes what new home buyers, they quite don't understand that. Oh my gosh, that was how I felt. I'm not going to lose why am I going to pay $16,000 to buy a house, Dad? I'm losing $16,000. Well, that's silly. I'll keep it in the stock market and make more money. Well, no, you're putting it from one investment vehicle into the other investment vehicle, be it real estate. And then I think I made a pretty good investment, paid 110 for it. 12 years later, I sell it for, I don't know what the percent increase is, but sold for 188, made $88,000 on just the purchase price, not from what I put down on the house. So that's something you look at, is it's an investment in the house savings account that you have there for yourself. So this is just kind of an example cost sheet, and anyone on our Champions Real Estate team can do one of these for you. Russ will have the exact numbers because he has the exact lender, figures what the lender charges for the loan and stuff like that. But this is something to really, wrap your head around, and exactly know what you're doing. And that's a lot of times when I sit down with my clients, first time home buyers, for example, we're meeting for almost an hour or so just because we get talking, and they're learning, and it's exciting for me to help. I'm a coach in my own, I coached hockey for 15 years, so it's like, that's how my brain works, is to coach and educate you, and does it make sense for you? And if not, then let's stay renting, and that's, and then let's get you on a game plan to get you where you want to be. And what are your financial goals? All right, now you got this asset, you have this equity. What do you want to do with it? People let that build up there and it's great. Well, let's put it to use. Let's go build our passive income. Go buy a rental property for $100,000. You may rent it for $600, $700, $800. and your mortgage is, $500, so you're making 300, and you do that a couple times, and now you're making money, passive income stream, and you're gaining equity on those houses, so you're building your net wealth. And, if you happen to have kids or you want to set up your own retirement account through that aspect of it, there's many different ways to grow your wealth. That's something that we really want to help you do, and be part of your success. I mean, I think that's the fun part about being in real estate. It's not a job if you like doing it, right? So, but yeah, so is there any questions out there? So yeah, if you have any questions on this, if you're watching this at a later time when we're not live, post them on our video. We'll get back to you. We can reach out to you. You can direct message us. My phone number is here, obviously, down right there. We go on my little screen here. So 402-672-7670. I'm happy to reach out. Russ has his number down there as well in front of him. So does Rich. So reach out to any of us if you have questions. We're here to help through that process. Is there anything? Let me jump back onto our shared screen. I think I had one more slide, just our contact us slide. So yeah, so this is kind of just our information. So if you have any other questions, check out our Champions Real Estate Team website, championsrealestateteam.com. There's my phone number, my email address. You can reach out to any of us here on the team. But I'll show you one thing on our real estate team. Oh, go back to the same one. Here we go. Just get out. There we go. Go to our Champions Real Estate Team, and you can download our home buying and selling guide. So this is our main page here. You can do the advanced search, map search, figure out what your home's worth, address search. Just down here on the right-hand side, basically you can click and download our free home buyer's guide as well as seller guide. So there's home checklists in here, all sorts of fun stuff that you can read over, at night or whatever, and reach out to us. And obviously we can help you with anything in that regard. So you guys have anything else? Rich, Russ, Janine? I saw Samantha jumped on with us. So Samantha, you have any questions or anything that we can help you out with? Anything else? Russ?
I think you did a great job. Thank you for sharing this.
All right. Yeah. So once again, my name is Mark Wehner with Champions Real Estate Team here at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. Let us know if you have any questions, renting versus buying. We'll look at your particular situation. We can sit down, run numbers with you and see what makes sense. That's our goal, get a game plan for you. Let's get a scouting report. That's how I operate, from a coach's mindset. Get a game plan, run it, practice it, go out and execute it. Sorry, I talk fast and I talk loud and then I get thirsty. So anyways, appreciate everyone jumping on here, and hope this is some valuable information for you. We'll have some of these other segments coming up on different aspects of it. Maybe kind of an investing segment, because we kind of jumped, piggybacked on there, jumped onto that one a little bit, taking that equity and buying that. But yeah, see if there's anything else here on my notes that I forgot about. I don't think so. So appreciate you guys jumping on this. Have a great weekend. Stay cool out there. And as always, give us a holler if you have any questions. And Janine, Russ, and Rich, thank you for joining me through here. So I will sign us off and figure out how to do this thing. Stop.